to a new episode. I'm Daniel Sanderson, and right beside me in our virtual studio, we've got
Keynes. And today on Talk Through the Loop, we are going to be discussing monkeypox and the issues surrounding how we're approaching it early on. As we've discovered, cases are rising, not to the extreme level of COVID, but there was a time when COVID had minimal amounts of cases, and we chose to kind of stick our heads in the sand about it. I think one issue that might be worth highlighting is the perception now is every disease comes along could be a potential pandemic. And are we overreacting? Or on the flip side, are we not taking this serious because we are fatigued from the COVID-19 pandemic? What do you think, Dan?
I definitely think there's a fatigue, and everybody could describe that there is a COVID fatigue. What I think is not really acknowledged is that there's also a political fatigue. And the political fatigue is something that worries me, because down the road, if a version of monkeypox, COVID, or something else were to emerge that was much more dangerous, I think we would not, as a society, be in as a good a place as we were at the beginning of the pandemic. I think that the political landscape is very divisive and polarized, and that's a shame. It really is.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. There is a great deal of political fatigue, and I think some external factors to that political feed or fatigue might be the issue in Ukraine right now, and another issue in Taiwan. And those issues are creating supply disruptions across the globe. So this is, something I think about, like you mentioned, in the future, if I shouldn't say if, but when there is a far more dangerous virus out there that has a mortality rate even higher than COVID. And as we move towards an era where resources are scarce, there's going to be zero appetite to shut down an economy, create restrictions on people's abilities to function. So it is a very scary thought that despite the last 2.5 years and everything we've learned, that lockdowns are the most effective measure to bring a pandemic under control. In the very beginning, the political appetite will not be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, how do we move forward and make it more palatable for the general public to accept restrictions, which on the other side of that makes our politicians act in a way that would protect society from a more easier standpoint.
Well, I've got a simple solution for it, and I don't know if it's the if it's the Platonic idealist thinker, philosopher in me, or what it is. Before I reveal that, which I think I'll say right on its face, it's probably impossible to implement, right? but I'm a dreamer. Okay. Now, before I do bring up that answer, I want to make a point that viewers and listeners may or may not know. If they know Ty, they know that he's a modeler, right? And he's done some pretty impressive models. And as the philosopher, I want to put my hand up and say, Ty, we have a model that describes the pandemic, which you have worked on, and let's toot your horn a little bit. You're probably, one of the leading modelers on the pandemic, right? Yeah, let's, because Ty is, he's done he's done a really good job, right? Now, I mean, could we go so far as to say that he's a world leading modeler? Perhaps, I mean, we'll see how it unfolds, but you're using industry leading tools, basically, right? And that's the point, is that you're right on the forefront of being able to model things, whether it's the pandemic, climate models, and so on and so on, okay? But what I want you to compare is a COVID model, of which you thoroughly produced a very in-depth model of the virus, of the COVID-19 virus, and its subsequent time function, right? Okay, and then various different inputs across time. Now, what I want you to think about and comment on, and is there's two realities. There's one reality with political climate A and political climate B. And my biggest contention with modelers, okay, and this means what I wish I could help you fix or include, is that human element. It's that non-predictable human element that now says, how do we capture what's going on in society with adoption rates, with rejection rates, with like, when are the tipping points in, like, where are the tipping points in social acceptance? When do things start to blow up? When do they start to fall over, right? And I think once the human factor is factored in to the models, then we have something that's really interesting. Now, I want to keep the audience in a bit of suspended belief, disbelief, and let you answer that in a minute. But you basically, what I was saying is, to begin with, I was saying I have something like a silver bullet that I think, could solve all of this, right? Like, what could we give the public, all right, in terms of something that would appease their apprehensions, okay? And if you look at the motivations, and I hate to say it always comes down to money, but, ultimately in philosophy, there's something called will. And will, at least, maybe say from a Schopenhauer standpoint, is something that people are driven to, right? It's their survival, not so much instinct. It's how they, it is their instinct. Yes, it includes in their instinct, but it's also how they feel they project themselves into the future, how they survive, how they navigate into the future, right? Now, I've often thought that we should be able to provide a well-balanced, like a salary, even, per se, right? Just like, here's your income. Ty, your income is X. Daniel's income is Y, okay? We have a pandemic. Instantly, boom, everybody gets that. It means stay home, you're being paid to do that. The problem is we have a political opposition that says, you have to pay for that. Where are you going to get the money? How are you going to pay it back? MMT, my friend. Okay. That's where I think we have an opportunity to do the right thing and the most liberal, freeing thing. Okay. And that's why I advocate that. So now, like a tennis match where I've just been like, basically masturbating with the ball here, right? For like 5 minutes of talking. Now, I'm not going to throw you my balls, but I'm gonna toss it back over to you, and you comment. And there's a lot there, right? Remember, there's the human side of the modeling, And then there's also basically paying the public to say, hey, you know what? You're on vacation for 6 months. You're on vacation for 8 weeks. You're on vacation for as long as it takes. What do you think?
Well, first and foremost, I don't know if I want to catch those set of balls. So
they're sweaty.
There's a lot to unpack there. So I will if I'm hearing you correctly, the last part, you've kind of suggested that there might be and we tried this with COVID, that there would be a monetary incentive to get people to adhere to lockdown measures. And that's feasible. I want to go back to comparing COVID-19 to monkeypox. So much to unpack here. The fundamental difference, and I've done a kind of mental model with this on the mathematics, is the incubation period is 20 days with monkeypox versus 5 days with COVID-19. We're not too sure if you're infective before you start showing symptoms, but that makes a big difference. The one thing is you get noticeably sicker, so you're not spreading it. The reason why Ebola doesn't become a world pandemic, and this is going to sound cruel, is generally people die before they can spread it. So there's some fundamental differences between COVID and monkeypox. Also, the transmission of monkeypox appears to be bodily fluids, but it could be airborne. More study needs to be in place to model that. I have thought about modeling it, but you can't just take one compartmental model, which my pandemic model was, and apply it to another situation, because there's so many different variables. And I kind of highlighted a few. But really, I am intrigued, and I may have mistaken what you said, but I think the deal is, can we motivate people, give them the will to, adhere to lockdown orders monetarily, which would give the will to our politicians to kind of implement these policy measures?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, that's part of it, and I want to maybe extend it because I think it highlights my point, even in a climate situation. Okay, so if there are people in our populations that are disproportionately contributing to the climate catastrophe, okay, industries that could and should be shut down if we want to meet our climate targets, then I think, as a matter of national security and worldwide order, and a plea for humanitarian and a humanitarian plea, I think that the status quo should be shifted to a compensation for every citizen. And that means paying them. That means paying them to be more conscious of their carbon footprint, to provide maybe even an audit trail. It's a voluntary position. right? Do you want to help with the environment? Well, you sign up for this position within your country. That means you will make the median income in the country, right? That's it. Period. You sign up, you're good. And the only way you lose that income is if you don't, if you have an excessive carbon footprint. And the same thing, I guess, the same thing that I'm trying to implement into the into the lockdown measures is that the same sort of thing. It's like, we have to fight this problem. We have to galvanize around common purpose. And how are we going to do that? And you know what? People have bills to pay. They have mouths to feed. They have, and unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, we live in a world where we need an income. People need an income. And if there's a government that is saying that there's a threat out there, but there's a risk that you're going to lose your income, that's the point where you're going to get their backs go up. That's the point where they're going to say, no, you're taking away my freedoms. No, we're actually not taking away your freedoms. But what we are taking away is we're affecting your livelihoods and we're affecting your income, right? And that is something that's not talked about.
Right. Yeah. And what strikes me is there is a great opportunity to tie in health and climate change. And with the situation with a pandemic, the opportunity comes out that, okay, you want financial support. You're also, to get that financial support, you're going to have to lock down or follow whatever health guidelines are out there. But at the same time, you're going to have to reduce your carbon footprint. Because I don't think these are two separate issues. The emerging pandemics that we're going to be facing in the future, and a lot research is showing that as we clear out forests, we expose ourselves to new viruses. Some of it's subjective research and some of it's objective. I think moving forward, as we face, an impending climate disaster, that the two should be linked. Your individual health and the planet's health are linked, and you need to conduct yourselves accordingly. And I think our politicians have an obligation to offer a monetary motive for people to follow that sort of lifestyle, taking care of yourself, taking care of your neighbor, and taking care of the planet. And we have an opportunity right now with monkeypox. Now, whether this is going to turn into something really bad, which I'm not an epidemiologist, so I don't know, and I hope not, or it does, we have an opportunity to start the experiment of changing the way we live. And changing the way we live is taking care of yourself, taking care of your neighbors, and taking care of the planet. And they can be linked together and they can be funded by our governments as a productive way of moving the human species forward.
I agree.
I looked at the World Health Organization website. Monkeypox, just to get to the technical standing of where it's at, is growing exponentially. There are 7,000 reported cases now in the United States. I refer to the United States only because they do a great job at data collection. They have a huge infrastructure down there to collect that data. So, and as of 1 month ago, I believe the number of confirmed cases in the United States was under 500. So there is a early alarming trend that this is spreading. My question to you, should the politicians, at least the ones that have a brain, say, fuck it, we need to start putting in restrictions to stop the spread because it is affecting our populations? Is it time for that?
Well, let's talk about the monkey in the room, or the elephant in the room, whatever you want to call it. We do need to address the populations where this is emerging from. Okay, now I don't know if this is conclusive or not, but it does seem to me, from the limited amount of investigation that I've done into monkeypox, that it is something that has spread primarily in male communities. Okay, so in homosexual communities. And so that there's an aspect of how we communicate this in a society that says, well, we don't want to overly communicate that, because there were things that we learned in an AIDS situation that all of a sudden caused stereotyping and problems with the homosexual communities. Now, so then it is a different it's a different origin. It's transmitted in a different way. And what I tend to think is to try and describe it in the most honest way possible. So if that is a fact, and we're seeing more of this spread of this of monkeypox emerging from populations of homosexual males, then it is important, if we do need to raise the alarm bell, to educate the public on that in the most forthright and clear and concise manner. That's what I would say, and that's how it differs from COVID. It's a fluid transmission, not airborne, but you say that still may happen. It may mutate into that. I don't know, but yeah, I think that's a key distinction, and I think that's a starting point. What do you think about that?
So just from some papers that I've read, there seems to be some correlation to monkeypox spread in the homosexual population, but it's still very early to definitively target a certain segment of the population. I think that's dangerous. I think that's dangerous when you don't have all the data put together. My gut feeling is it is probably not going to be a focal point of transmission in that population. I think it's with close contact to anybody with monkeypox, whether you're male or female, it'll be transmitted in that fashion. That is my gut feeling on that. I'm very leery. We live in such a divisive world. I am very leery on that type of messaging going out without very definitive proof. Only because of the divisive nature, the society we live in today. It might actually be counterproductive. So essentially, if that messaging goes out, it means to the population that is not in that category, we don't have a problem. And when you venture into that, you venture into ideologies where I don't have that problem because I'm better than that person because that person is that way. I just think it's dangerous without concrete scientific proof that that population is more at risk. So that is my feeling around that. I at this point, if something comes out that says definitively that the homosexual population is more at risk, then the messaging needs to go out. Not to be divisive, but to protect that population. Because within that population, we have many great thinkers, people that we need on this planet to move forward.
No, I would agree, but is it different? Let's say there's an outbreak in COVID where we've got either rapid testing or quick testing, and so the health community can identify that, say for example, on the southern part of Vancouver Island, which where I'm from, there's increased cases of, let's just say, COVID. Okay, so they can implement targeted lockdown measures based off of locations of known causes and origins of spreadability, right? Okay, I think that's just the case, and I think if we have a good tracking and data collection system, like you'd mentioned in the United States, then why wouldn't we take, say, 200 cases of these cases, like a sample size, and test, well, where did they come from? Where were they transmitted? How were they transmitted? Okay, and if we have a significant statistical 98% that that this is a high probability that this is the population where it's spreading, increase the sample size, do several experiments from different data sources, and if they all concur, then there we have it. So we have to go with what the data is saying, and if it happens to spread right now in homosexual communities, then my opinion is that we have to be forthright. If there's one thing we learned out of the pandemic, is that we can't sugarcoat something. We can't say masks are not useful because we don't want people to rush to the store and buy masks. We have to say masks are really useful. Don't go to the store and buy masks. We need them for our health professionals. We have to say monkeypox is originating and spreading predominantly in a homosexual community, and then you have to explain, the best way to handle that this is, how is it spread? Take away the fear, educate, don't encourage ignorance, right? And so that's how, I mean, just very, very truthful. I think there's only one way to do it.
Yeah, I think, before we run out of time, the one issue we're going to have if monkeypox becomes a problem is that lag time in infection and showing symptoms, which can even occur 30 days after infection, with incubation time, and finally showing actual symptoms. It's a lot longer than COVID. So we're going to have to develop an algorithm that takes that into account. But yeah, serious issue. I wish we had more time to talk about it, but we are out of time. So I'm Ty Keynes with my friend
Daniel Sanderson.